Hi, everybody. Oh my goodness, how much I wish we could actually be together in the classroom for this particular subject in class because it is, I think, the heart and soul of the sociological learning we'll do this semester. But we've got what we've got and we're going to make the best of it. If we were together, we would have actually played a game called the Game of Life. And I'm not having you do that as an activity or anything because I'm focusing in on doing, just a couple things a week. But it's all about the socioeconomic stressors that families face. And so one of the things that I've included as kind of an optional opportunity for you is the website called Spent. And especially because I always talk about this after the fact, after we play the game of life together, that because it's all about, family finances, you roll dice to get a job, you roll dice to find out how many children you'll have. You have to have a food budget, and I have grocery ads and all these things. And for some of my students, they've been raised with, a middle class socioeconomic status, and playing the game of life is a huge realization to them of, how much families struggle. For many of my students, I always want to point out when we play the game of life that I know very well that this is not a game and it's not intended to be, some lighthearted, haha, funny learning opportunity as much as it's supposed to be an opportunity for people who have socioeconomic privilege to realize the impact of it. And so I want to say that in relation to the Spent website that I put up a as an option of something that you can do. Spent does a great job of taking you through the stressors and the obstacles that an individual can deal with based upon socioeconomic status. So I would really, really encourage you to take a look at it. You can kind of go through the website and just, it sends you through an activity. So you can take about 5 minutes to do it. But just to be really, really clear that oftentimes the people that get the most benefit and realization out of this are people who haven't faced these obstacles themselves. So we'll be talking about privilege again in a minute. After either taking a look at Spent, after I've now just talked a little bit about the game of life, we always talk about two terms, structure and agency. And so I want to take you through quickly. There's going to be a lot of words popping up. I'm just pressing that enter button over and over again. Structure is the way that society exists. We have these institutions. We have the ways that people have opportunities in our society. It's the way our society works. It can, society works really well for some people. That's what it means when it says the factors that enable or constrain rather behavior. Some people's behavior is enabled because they have enough. And so they're not held back in the same way, right? Other people, a lot of times, have that burden of inequality. So structure is our society. It works great for some people. It really, really seems to almost in some ways work against other people with the things that they are burdened with. That's structure. Agency then, and I'm clicking through a whole bunch of stuff, is let me go back, sorry about that, is our ability to, there we go, navigate through society and work hard, right? You can see that it's our free will. So it's our opportunity to earn, everything that we, need and want. You can work as, hard as you possibly can. And let's talk about that because when we play the game of life, if we were together in class, or even when you play the Spent game, assuming you take the time to do that, everybody's working. Everybody's working when we play the game of life. Go through the Spent website, and it's all about your job and the money you're earning in your job and how it needs to be spent and the, life challenges that pop up along the way. And we have a lot of misconceptions that people who are struggling financially, well, if they just worked harder, right? So there's a lot of tension between structure, our society, our societal institutions, and agency, our ability to navigate the world and get through it. I'm going to keep talking about it for a quick second. You can see right there how it says how we get from A to B. There's numerous ways. Agency is the one we choose. So let's focus in on that for a second. So getting from A to B, A is having a societal goal, B is achieving it. I was just on the phone with one of my students from Cal State Long Beach this morning, working on one of the assignments that we have there. And she happens to have two little boys, right? One is 5 and one is 6. And that 6-year-old's in first grade learning to read. So if you look at A as having a societal goal, like learning to read is a massive goal that we need to navigate society by being literate, and B is achieving it. So think about all the resources that you need in place to learn how to read as a child. A, having a societal goal, graduating high school. B, how do you achieve it? Like getting from A to B. A is having the goal, B is achieving it. Right now, as you take a community college class and are working towards, your collegiate academia and then going out into the workforce. You have a goal, you have an idea of what career you want to be in. That's A. B is how you're going to achieve it. So when we say that there's agency, there's numerous ways. There's tons of ways you can get from A to B. And so, like, if you take a look at that yellow line, if I had the societal goal of being a teacher and I flunked out of college, right, as I've talked about, like that yellow line is me. I went backwards. And so, but I was able to still get on track. And quite honestly, the reason I was able to get on track is not because, like, oh my gosh, I was such a hard worker. Granted, I worked hard, but huge but, like huge asterisk, I had socioeconomic privilege. I have grown up and I have lived as an adult as a person who is beyond blessed to be middle class. And so when I say, like, oh my goodness, I've earned this and I've achieved it, there's an element of that that's true, but I cannot like actually say cannot without like as much emphasis as possible. I cannot act like I just, overcame all these insurmountable odds because they weren't in my way, right? I had enough structural privilege in various areas of my life that I was able to navigate society by virtue of my hard work earning what I was working towards. That is not an opportunity that everybody gets. When you think about the challenges that we face, the resources that we have, the resources our family has, that's what we're talking about with structure and agency. So all of these lines going every which way, that's our agency, our opportunity to have a societal goal and navigate our way, achieve it, right? To get from A to B, there's numerous ways. Agency is the one we choose. Well, this is what structure can do. Structure can constrict and hold you back. And maybe, look at that yellow line now. You get one chance, right? If I had messed up and I didn't have enough structural privilege to be able to get back into college, at Santiago Canyon as a student, just like you are right now, and get to transfer to Cal State Fullerton and have the support that I needed and the resources that I needed in order to do that, my flunking out of college would have been, I flunked out and that's it. So structure can really, really hold you back sometimes. If we were in class, because I know sometimes when I talk about structure and agency, students are still like, what? Wait a second, what are you talking about? Here's what I would have done. Here's what you would have seen me do. To talk about the way that structure and agency works. So try and envision it. We're standing in our classroom. You're, frumpy professor standing in front of you talking way too fast. And so she's going to talk about structure and agency, this frumpy professor you've got. And she's going to go grab her bag that she came into the classroom with. And a lot of times when I go to grab my bag, students are like, wait, are you leaving? What are you doing? But I'll grab my bag, I'll strap it, close the straps and put it across my shoulders the way that I wear it. And maybe, that night, actually, I can guarantee I would have brought other things to class with me. And so I would have picked up everything that I brought into the classroom, right? And I would have talked about the fact that the, bag or two of activity stuff, because I actually have to bring a fair amount on this particular night, and my own school bag where I have my own, teaching supplies kind of stuff. Like I was able to get into the building from my car, up a flight of stairs. Like I could have walked anywhere on the campus carrying all that, right? So that's my agency. I have this choice, I have this free will, but also there's not this big structural inequality standing in my way. So what I would have asked people who are in like the front couple of rows, or if we were already in groups, which we would have been, like kind of the students that are, in the general vicinity of me, I'd ask you to zip up your backpacks, and I promise you I'm not going to go through them, right? But what I'm going to do is start picking them up. And so as I pick them up, and I'll pick up one and I'll hold it, and I'm still holding everything that I carried into class. pick up one and talk about how, what if I had a language barrier? I'll pick up another one and I'm holding two students' bags and everything I came in with class. What if one of my, family members had a disability that needed a lot of, intensive medical care? And I keep picking up bags and I try to hold as many bags as I can all at one time. Depending on how heavy students' bags are, I can probably, because, I know it doesn't look like it, but I lift a little bit of weights, like, 10 pounds, whatever. Um, I try to, weigh myself down. So I look ridiculous because I'm holding, there's backpacks kind of piled on my shoulders. I'm holding more on my arms. Like I take it to the moment where it's like I can't pick up anything more. So here's what I want you to think about. Here, I'm standing in front of the class. I'm covered in bags to the best of my ability. Now think about, can I get into the building from my car? Can I open the door with bags like falling down around me? Can I get up the stairs? Can I just, if I had to go anywhere on the campus, could I, get there carrying all these bags? Technically, yes, but I would be slower. I would have a harder time. It would be more overwhelming. And that's the way society works. You take on all these structural inequalities and you get weighed down and you're exhausted. And all our capitalistic American society does is say, well, work harder. Like if you worked hard enough, you could achieve what I've achieved. If look at that one person. We love to have that exceptionalism type thing. Look at that one person and look at what they were able to achieve. That's one of the things to really be on the lookout for. Those kinds of judgments that we make against each other, because those bags that I'm going to be holding in front of you if we were together in class, they represent things that are invisible, that we would never see, right? That we're not going to know about people. Because what do we do to people who are struggling? We judge them and say, oh, well, I guess you're just lazy. And quite honestly, what do we do to ourselves when we're the ones who are overwhelmed by structural inequalities? We turn on ourselves. We judge ourselves. And so that's what I really want you to be thinking about in relation to structure and agency. Agency, again, our free will, our ability to achieve all goals that we have and everything else. And structure is the way that society works and how it really, really impacts some of us in negative ways much more than others. So the other thing I need to talk about quickly with you is privilege. And this is something we already saw. And I guess because we won't be doing tests in class, exams in class, now you don't have to memorize privilege. And so I guess that's probably good as far as you're concerned. But if I could just take a second and let you know that I really, really think between thinking through structure and agency, and especially this word privilege, to really take this to heart, to really remember the aspects of it, even if you, of course, not remembering word by word. This is where social change happens. This is where empathy happens. This is where sociology just really gets to work. So I'm going to go back, and this is what we saw this on week 4, the class that we had with race and ethnicity, disability and things, the matrix of domination. We did all this together before we had our exam. And so I'm going to go back to that last line on the slide. Those with privilege do not necessarily know that they have it, but they are still at an advantage over those without. What I need you to do in order to get ready for the discussion board is do basically the activity we would have done together in class. We would not have done it in the manner that you're doing it. Quite honestly, if we were in class together that same night, we would have done Game of Life. And then I have beads, actual like little plastic beads. Like I have these containers of them in all different colors. And I would have sent you around the classroom with tiny little cups. And you would have answered the questions that you're going to answer in that PDF by picking up a bead. And every time you said yes to something, every time you said yes, and sometimes it's backwards when you read those questions, you would have picked up a bead. And so the idea is that it's really, really tangible, that it's something that you're holding in your hand and like seeing the colors, seeing everything like that. Because quite honestly, I never needed to bring the beads into class. I could have just handed you all these sheets to quietly kind of read through and tally up how many of the things that you say yes to. But the beads, they're actually a pain in the butt too, because a lot of times like they'll drop out of your fingers and stuff. The beads give you another opportunity to really see like the various aspects of privilege, because again, I will go back to those with privilege do not necessarily realize they have it. And so the idea is that what I want you to do is go through the questions, make a tally mark on just a separate piece of paper, scrap piece of paper for each one of these sections when you answer yes to a question. If you can answer yes, it gets a tally mark. And really, really realize how much privilege you have in various areas. It's probably not all areas. It might be, though. When I had Sean, my husband, sit down and um, proofread and read through this a few years ago, he sat there like quietly dumbfounded, like, I have everything. I'm like, yes, heteronormative, cisgender, white man, you do. Middle class white man, yes, yes, you do. That's going to be a realization for a lot of us. And a lot of times when you're reading through various things, it's going to be things you didn't even think of because those with privilege do not necessarily realize that they have it, but they're still at an advantage over those that don't. I can't say it enough. Want to check it? Neurotypical means it's referring to mental health. Citizenship is something that has been added in the last couple of years because this particular activity is, as of all my activities, I'm always editing and adding and trying to think of ways to make it better. Cisgender, we did not talk about gender in person. And so I'm thinking through what we talked about. I know we talked about the gender binary when we talked last week for our gender unit. Cisgender means you fit into that binary. You are female bodied and you are female bodied and feminine, or you are male bodied and masculine. You fit into the binary, those two opposite choices. That's what cisgender means. And when we refer to ability, we're referring to disability, which is something we were able to cover in class together. So those are the various things that you'll be answering questions about. And as you go into it, if you find yourself not completely understanding, some aspect of it, by all means, please use the Remind app and reach out to me. And I'm happy to answer as many questions as you possibly have about any of it. Okay, just a little bit more. The other thing I'm going to ask you to do is read the Privileged Manifesto, and it's a short piece, but it really shows you if you have societal privilege, you have some responsibilities in this world. And so this is just one of them. But I think it's a really, really important thing that and I'm going to, go through it just slightly. I will understand that while critiques on my privilege group are not necessarily directed at me personally, distancing myself selfishly serves to absolve me of culpability. So what this means is other people, maybe I am male, and there are other people who are male that are misogynistic, that are, patriarchal, that are just really degrading to women. And me as male, if I were, I'm not like that. Right. So I would not say, insulting, cruel things, judgmental things about women. But because I share the same identity, to act like, oh, well, that's other men. That's not me. Whiteness, right? Oh, other white people are racist, not me. By doing that, basically, you're not helping the situation at all. And quite honestly, in some ways, you're contributing to it inadvertently because it's not about the fact that you are making, kind-hearted, respectful decisions, as every human being should. But it's that, when other people who share your identity are still doing this, you have an element of responsibility and acknowledgement that is really beneficial to take place, as opposed to just, like it says, absolving yourself and saying, well, other people do that, but not me. That's one of the things to kind of keep in mind when you have an element of privilege. So to think through, if people who share, a middle class lifestyle are sitting around talking about, well, all these people that work at, at fast food restaurants and they're so lazy. Like, again, that's not go back to critical thinking. What is logical? What is fair? So thinking through the fact that you do have to kind of bear responsibility to what others, people who share your same identities, what they say. You can't act like, well, they're, the bad people and I'm the good people. Because quite honestly, you benefit. If you are white in this world, you benefit from that whiteness. If you are cisgender in this world and you fit into the gender binary neatly, you benefit. If you are heteronormative and you are, attracted to, the opposite sex, then you have privilege and you have a responsibility to think through how that privilege can really be impacting other people who are being oppressed, right? So think about the intersectionality of it and everything else. The last thing I'll leave you with, because I know that this has been long, but this is just a heck of a lot to cover, is a lot of times when students walk out the door this night after the game of life and privilege, you feel guilty. You're so lucky, right? And many of us are, because what you'll find is maybe where you don't pick up as many beads in relation, like if we were literally picking up beads when we answer the questions, um, to religion, but you did for everything else, or gender, right? Because I have gender and cisgender. So gender is going to talk about male and female. Cisgender is talking specifically about fitting into the binary. But you didn't pick up a lot of gender beads, but you picked up a lot of other ones. And gosh, you're so lucky. You realize by playing the game of life that you haven't grown up having to worry about every, bite of food that your family has been able to put together. You're just so lucky. Take those feelings and think about how you can catch yourself next time. Catch yourself when you're making judgments that we all make. Please do not think that I sit here on top of like sociology mountain where it's like, oh, all you judgmental people and me, your professor, I get it. No, I'm just as human and fallible as anyone. Please keep that in mind. But to catch yourself when you make judgments, to catch yourself when there's an opportunity to have empathy for what somebody is going through, to catch yourself when you can realize that you have the opportunity based upon whatever resources you may have to be able to help someone else. That, to me, is the heart and soul of sociological learning, which means I really, really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this all the way through. I really, really appreciate the hearts and souls that I already got to see in the time that we were in class together. And I really, really appreciate the hard work that you'll put into the discussion board this week, kind of discussing your general experiences with realizing how much societal privilege so many of us have.